The Houston Cougars have a bunch of new faces in the defensive backfield, and one new face coming in from the junior college ranks might just be the most important one in the whole bunch.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, the daily podcast all about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach, Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. If you're a U of H fan or just a hater who came to stop by, please be sure to subscribe down below. That way we get the latest on the Cougs into your news feed each and every day. We appreciate you making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. It is good to see you again. Remember, we're doing a giveaway every 250 subscribers as we approach our first season in the Big 12. So make sure you hit subscribe down below. Let us know what you are thinking about the DBs in the DB room, especially if this one person in particular is the most important. But if after talking about defensive backs and backpedaling and things like that all episode long, you're a little tired of talking about walking backwards, I don't know. Tell us in the comments down below if you would rather rewatch a TV series or find a new one. All right, so today's episode is going to be talking about all of these new faces in the defensive backfield. I also think that in the first segment, we have to hit on Juwan Gaston, a transfer guy, potentially being the most impactful of the bunch. In the second segment, I think there's one significant competitor out of New Mexico, you can probably guess, that I think, it may rival him for that most important DB spot. And then the third and final segment, I'll talk about the host of other guys, but also how a hometown kid may be honestly competing in his own right as well. So without further ado, let's jump on in. The name of the day for this show will be Juwan Gaston, because I have said it since signing day. I think Juwan Gaston may very well be the most important player in the defensive backfield for the Houston Cougars. So first, let's talk a little bit about who he is, where he comes from, and those kinds of things. And then and then kind of move into what his impact is going to be. So first of all, this guy is not tiny, but not huge, listed at 5'11" and $190. He is a very, 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 very talented athlete. Was a 4-star kid out of high school, committed initially to Auburn, was really, really coveted by South Carolina, and even went through signing day, was a 3-sport athlete, was heralded throughout his prep career as a top-tier guy. And then he ends up in a junior college. Nothing too crazy. It's not like there's any crazy character concerns coming into Houston, but ends up going to JUCO. And I think Auburn, the whole time he was in junior college, kind of thought he was honestly coming to play there at some point. I think everyone in the SEC kind of thought he would be an SEC caliber defensive back, kind of off rip, like off the jump. I think they all thought this guy was going to be an SEC defensive back. Instead, I am very happy to say that he is, as of signing day, said he's going to be Houston Cougar. And I think the deal here for me is he's the most offensive-looking defensive back Houston has had since Marcus Jones. Now, that may strike some people as interesting because Marcus Jones quite literally played some offense, right? But I feel like at the end of the day that his ball skills, his ability to go get the football, and on top of, anyway, the way he attacks the ball while it's in the air and really makes it a 50-50, is this mine, is this yours, this is going into the dirt. I guess it's 350, it doesn't add up to 100, but you catch my drift there, right? All of that makes me think this kid has that kind of an impact when he gets to Houston as well, because he did it at a high level at the high school level, high enough to be a 4-star recruit, and he did it at a high level at junior college. He played in Mississippi, which is one of the bigger, if you're not into junior college football, that is one of the bigger junior college like states to be playing in. And so worth pointing out that is obviously a significant like preparation for playing the Big 12. I'm not saying that junior college in Mississippi is exactly like the Big 12. That would be a disservice to the Big 12 by a lot. But I will say that it does feel like there's some transitive property there. I'm playing at a high level at the previous level to now playing at a high level for Houston, hopefully, right? That's the way that goes. Now, he comes in initially, I guess, after prepping some in Alabama, as a lengthy guy that tracks hips well. I still think his most impressive skill, I guess, or the most impressive individual talent, if you're picking up on something he does, is play the football and make plays on the football. Notable amount of pass breakups for the junior college game. Also worth pointing out that he had some major fumble and pick six type of highlight plays in junior college. The other reason I think, though, that on top of playing the ball so well at the junior college level is that he'll be an impact player for Houston in special teams as well. I'd imagine this guy that you see returning kickoffs on opening day against UTSA. I could see him being out there in punt coverage because he's a defensive guy that also is an electric punt returner. And generally speaking, unless you have a Tank Dell or something on your roster, that's the guy you have returning punts. That combination of impacts is what makes me think that this guy is going to be so important to Houston. He'll take away top-end receivers as well as anyone on the Houston Cougar roster. Because of those ball skills, quarterbacks will have to – I mean, he makes quarterbacks afraid to throw that direction, right, because he will be able to jump the passing routes on that side. That does mean he's a gambler a little bit. That doesn't mean quite the Trevon Diggs-type gambler like the Dallas Cowboys have, but he is a gambler in the sense that, like, you know, in making a play on those footballs, just like we appreciate him coming down with some or knocking some into the dirt, he might fall to the ground or be leaping for one, and it might go over the edge. Like the touchdown behind it might happen as well. And the whole goal of this is to be in the positive, right? Be in the green, not in the red on those kinds of plays. I think he's got a good gauge based on the tape I've seen of the kid and based on talking to some scouts, including Brian Smith and stuff like that about him. I think he's got a good gauge on when to make those plays. The trick will be is, does he have enough of a gauge to make those plays for defensive coordinator Doug Belk and the rest of the Houston Cougar defense? I think the answer is going to be yes. We do know that the Big 12 is not the same everyone scores 60 pass-happy offensive league it was like 7 or 8 years ago. But it's still a very high-scoring league, and so you could see people, you know, kind of throwing out the edges regardless of who's out there. But I'm encouraged by the idea of Gaston as one of those corner type of guys. I guess he's also played a lot of safety, and so in more of the nickel-y kind of stuff that Houston plays, you could see him as a third safety instead of a corner, depending on what the matchups are and who he would be covering. Now, in the second segment, I want to talk some about the competitor that might push him for becoming that most important defensive back. Another new face. You'll notice a lot of new faces in the defensive backfield. Let's talk some about AJ Hulsey. So let's Coogs House. All right, now, before we get going too much farther, talking about all of the fun stuff going on with the Houston Cougars this fall, this football season, going into the Big 12 and all of that, we do need to take a second and talk about the most fun product out there right now, and that are Bird Dogs shorts and pants. They're great for all occasions. They make you look and feel great. I wear them on dates with my wife. I wear them in front of my classroom. I wear them sit here podcasting. I wear them to the pool. I've worn the shorts to the pool already. The shorts have been with me to the gym already as well. Bird Dogs are made for any and all occasions. They got stretch fabrics that make you they're tight fittings to make you look a little slimmer, but also feel stretchy and roomy at the same time. The liner inside is a must. You don't have to have it, but the liner inside is a must. Trust me and thank me later. You'll find yourself wearing Bird Dogs on all occasions. So make sure you grab a pair today. Go to birddogs.com facebook.com/LockedOnCollege. Use the promo code LockedOnCollege. Tell them that we sent you, and they'll throw in a free Yeti-style tumbler with Bird Dog logo on the front. Keeps the cold drinks cold and the hot drinks hot. Trust me, this summer in Texas, you're going to try to keep those cold drinks cold as long as possible. You're going to want that tumbler. You're going to want these shorts. You're going to want these pants. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege today. Let's jump on in. Adari AJ Hulsey comes in originally from Fort Bend Marshall, so a Houston kid coming back to Houston. He was on 2 different publications as a freshman All-American at New Mexico last season. That's probably led in part by the fact that he led all freshmen across all divisions of all of college football in tackles with 87 tackles. He also had 2 picks and 3 pass breakups, gave up just 3 touchdowns when targeted in coverage while at New Mexico. So obviously him coming home is a great story. Him moving into the Power 5 is good for him. And this is a moment where I think he could have a real big impact. The reason I think that he might not quite have the same kind of impact as Juwan Gaston, but might have better stats is because I think people won't throw it at Gaston the same way they might throw it at Haulcy. Haulcy's 6 foot 216 and has played a lot more safety than corner, but did both at New Mexico, I should say. I shouldn't say he played one or the other. Played a lot more safety than corner. And I'm interested. I'll be interested to see if he can take away part of the field in the way I anticipate Gaston taking away a part of the field. Now, people that love numbers will come to me very quickly and tell me in November that Adari Hulsey is going to have more tackles than Juwan Gaston. He's going to have more hits, more forced fumbles, and that kind of stuff. Not because Gaston's doing anything poorly, but the thing Adari AJ Hulsey does so well is find the football once it's broken line of scrimmage, right? So he gets downhill into run stuff as well as any defensive back you'll see on the roster this year, right? He tracks the ball after it's been released and breaks away from coverage to go make a play as quickly as anyone on the roster as well. He has a great job of getting involved, even if it's not his guy catching the football. And then if it's his guy catching the football, he's a sure enough tackler to make sure he brings that guy down before crossing the plane into the end zone as well, right? So I think that you're going to see him have a lot more impressive stat lines. And frankly, in Houston's more Nicholas Simpson, not the TV show, The Simpsons, in their more Nicholas system. Why am I so sure with that today? In their more Nicholas system, I'll see him getting a lot more plays like that. And so thus you'll say like, well, Juwan Gaston had just, 58 tackles last season, and Adari Hulsey had 94 and 7 pass breakups and And I think the comparison between the two will be, as a guy that plays more corner, you could see Gaston take away guys and not get thrown to, not get chances to make plays because he's doing his work before the ball ever gets there. Whereas AJ Hulsey does his work a lot more places on the field, but also will be doing his work once the ball's been caught or once the ball breaks line of scrimmage in a run and right? Both guys, I think, will anchor a fairly impressive defensive backfield. And I think that's what's exciting for Houston Cougar fans because we remember things like that SMU game last year where Houston gave up 77 points in a football game, right? That's not like a 77-point basketball game, and they didn't give up 77 points in either of the basketball games, if memory serves me correctly, right? Other defensive backs you'll see going off in this backfield, Antonio Brooks is a senior. He's coming in, I guess he also did the JUCO thing, I believe, at Kilgore. But he's a Mo City kid, right? Alex Hogan transfers in after having played some at Texas Tech, or been on the roster some at Texas Tech. We'll see what kind of impact he has. I'm unclear on how much of the how many of the true freshmen coming in will play. I should point out that Mikael Harrison Pilot was listed by some as a as a defensive back. I was going to say as a safety or corner, but really it was just DB. But I would imagine Mikael plays his snaps for Houston on the offensive side of the ball. I think he's more electric. I think that's part of the agreement. But Malik Fleming comes in as a transfer from East Carolina. He's a smaller guy, 5'9", $180. Does he make some plays here? Brian George comes in from A&M. A&M was a weird team last year. George, for what it's worth, was a 4-star kid at a high school, but A&M looked like a train wreck on the football field last year. So what does that tell us about him, right? And so those guys, I think, could all be question marks in the defensive backfield for what their impact will be. And I don't mean to say it like Brian George could absolutely live up to that 4-star SEC caliber defensive back. He's 6'2", $190. He's got the size. A&M was just a weird team to scout guys from on transfers because they just looked like a shoddy operation last year. I say all of that, and I look at the roster up and down, and I do think the defensive backfield is much, much improved, though, as I look at the entire room. Now, who all they put in that room, obviously, that's half the battle. The other half the battle is going to be Doug Belk coaching them up. But remember the 2021 team, the defense was fairly strong. Doug Belk was considered like a dark horse head coaching candidate across the country in a bunch of different spots because of it. Doug Belk, also for what it's worth, he's one of the better recruiters on the team, and he's building up chemistry and getting these guys into school in the first place. And I think, you've got to put some faith in looking at this room with a bunch of new faces, a bunch of turnover. And, obviously they don't have Marcus Jones from 2 years ago and whatnot. And Marcus Jones is making SportsCenter top 10 plays for the New England Patriots, right? That missing that hurt in 2022. But I think they've got some new names on the roster that will do a really, really good job of filling in those, I want to say gargantuan, but Marcus Jones actually isn't that big a guy, but those gargantuan metaphoric shoes left behind. And I want to do in the third segment, what I want to do in the third segment is talk about one guy in particular from Houston, by Houston, and for Houston that is absolutely going to make a difference and might be the dark horse for the most impactful DB on the entire roster. So let's talk about, in the third segment, Isaiah Hamilton. Now, Isaiah Hamilton is a Channelview kid. Isaiah went to Texas Southern, and Isaiah Hamilton is coming in after playing the bulk of his college career just across the street at Texas Southern. Spent 3 seasons there, had 6 interceptions, 5 of which were in the 2022 season. 2 of those were pick sixes, 51 tackles, and is a big, tall kid with good speed. He's not very heavy. It's just 175 pounds, but 6'1" with long arms, tracks hips really, really well. I think what's impressive about him at that length, though, is, yes, he had 23 tackles and just 4 touchdowns allowed in the 2022 season. Yes, he had 5 picks. He only got thrown at 56 times. And so, I mentioned Haulcy's marquee talent was finding his nose to the football, finding ways to play and make plays when the ball was not necessarily in his portion of the field. Isaiah Hamilton is another one of these guys that keeps the ball from ever getting thrown to his side of the field because quarterbacks are just so worried about giving up a potential huge play of the defense, or they don't feel like their guys are open when they're covered by Isaiah Hamilton, right? It's obviously great to root for a kid from Houston, by Houston, for Houston like this too. It's truly, if he comes in and has an all Big 12 kind of season that goes on in the NFL, it's as great a story as you'll see on the roster this season. Channelview to Texas Southern to U of H to big time football. Awesome kind of stuff. But truthfully, I was talking to some people that were at, so there's media portions of spring practice and the rest of spring practice. And I'm not going to sell people out as far as who's DMing me and tweeting me and texting me what, but people that were at more than just the media portions of practices in the spring. And everyone was wowed by the athleticism and speed. And again, that tracking the hip type of quickness that Isaiah Hamilton was able to deliver on a rep-to-rep basis. He was going head-to-head with guys like Matthew Golden, head-to-head with guys like Sam Brown. He's able to stay in front of guys like Joseph Manjack and these big receivers too. really kind of a very versatile guy in one-on-one type situations. It makes you wonder how a guy that's 6'1" with the length and speed gets to Texas Southern as opposed to a big-time Power 5 program in the first place. But I would argue that getting to play as much as he did at Texas Southern probably makes Isaiah Hamilton the kind of, I want to say senior, but I actually don't know how the COVID year factors into his eligibility, but the kind of transfer that he is, right? Having that on-the-field experience as well as all the other leadership experience he got at Texas Southern, he can come in as a very, very confident football player. It looks like actually one of these things I have pulled up says he's a junior. So I guess he's got 2 years technically left to play as well. I'm excited about Isaiah Hamilton, and I think he's going to be a very, very dominant player in the defensive backfield. What I don't know is, and this is transferring and translating things into the Big 12, is which of these guys gets the nod at corner versus safety versus down safety and the different kind of, 5 defensive back systems that Houston will put on the field. I also don't know how you adjust for Big 12 size and speed, right? Now, Houston has shown that they are prepared for things like Texas Tech. And I would argue in the passing game, they were actually prepared for Kansas as well last season, though Kansas and at the time Jalen Daniels was healthy. They ran all over Houston from a running perspective. What I am interested in, though, in looking at is these DBs matched up in the pass game with the big dogs, the TCUs, the Texases, and those kinds of things. I'm fairly confident in what we've got, but I also know that Texas has 2 preseason all Big 12 conference guys. For what it's worth, of the guys we mentioned today, mostly because of his resume at New Mexico, but AJ Hulsey was second team preseason all Big 12 conference. And so other people are seeing the same kinds of things in the room as you and I are seeing as well. And so it'll be really interesting to track this into the fall and see who ends up, A, getting the most reps out there in the first place, and then B, who's performing well and who's performing at an all Big 12 caliber level, because I think they've got at least one, if not a couple of those guys in the defensive back room. If you think I've left someone off, or if you think you got more to talk about, you can either comment down below as always, or find me on Twitter at PAINSWORTH 5121 on Twitter, Instagram, and all your favorite social media handles. I'll be happy to talk all things Houston Cougars. I'll be talking Coug football, basketball. The baseball season was fun. It ended a little early. Big 12 moving in, the conference expanding, all of those fun things each and every day. So make sure you find me on Twitter, Instagram, hit subscribe down below, hit the bell for notifications so you know when an episode goes live. And remember, just like every day, Locked On Cougs is a proud member of Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Cougs.